All right, welcome everybody to our nutrition lecture, presentation, podcast, video, whatever you want to call it. If you're listening because you're in one of my classes and this is required, you kind of know the gist of things, what we're going to be going through. However, because this is a topic that I'm really interested in and I love talking about, I thought it would be a great idea to make this accessible to everybody. And so I want to give just a brief overview of what's going on here to those of you who are new. And then we'll kind of jump in and we'll get started. But again, for those of you who are new that are listening, I teach college classes, and this topic is specifically for a health and wellness gen ed course. We've gone through various topics throughout the semester. So today we're moving on to nutrition. And so this was originally designed to be like a PowerPoint presentation type lecture. And so I do have slides to go along with it. If you're watching on video, I may throw up some of those slides just so you have some context as you're watching. If you're listening to the audio, you won't necessarily have that. But that's originally how this was designed. But I, again, wanted this to be accessible to as many people as possible. So we're recording a video. I'm probably going to save the the audio as an MP3 file so you could listen to it more podcast style if you're on the go. But without further ado, we're just going to jump right in. We're talking about nutrition today. This is going to be maybe up to an hour or more. So buckle in, maybe find something else to do while you're listening in the background, and I hope you enjoy. So to start off, something I want to make very clear is that while nutrition can be a very personal topic to a lot of people, myself included, throughout this talk, we're really going to focus on things in the context of what research says, what science currently tells us. Everything will be backed by science-based, evidence-based information. Occasionally, I'll share some opinion with you on how I personally interpret some of this information. Feel free to do the same yourself because you may have personal experience with this topic. In fact, most of you probably do. If you have opinions that you want to share, maybe you agree or disagree with some of the things I'm talking about, feel free to comment on those. I may input an email or a place for comments when we're all done with this. Feel free to share your opinions. However, it's also just important to be respectful of other people's questions and opinions. If there's any disagreement, we may eventually just have to come to an agreement that we don't have an answer. And we'll talk about why that is in the field of nutrition. Some things it's okay to just say we don't have an answer, and we can agree to disagree because there is plenty of inconclusive evidence when it comes to research in the field of nutrition. But moving forward, the main point here is just be respectful of what's going on and what other people have to say and what they have to offer. And ultimately, nutrition is a science, okay? Just like chemistry, just like physics, just like biology, nutrition is a science backed by research, and it's not a belief system. And so we're going to treat nutrition as a science and not as a belief system. And again, that may require you to maybe separate some of the emotions you have connected to nutrition as a topic, because I know that there are a lot there. Okay. So when I like to discuss nutrition, I've kind of developed this 4-step process to explaining really how to go about designing your own ideal diet and your own ideal, methodology when it comes to nutrition. Okay. Now, there's 4 steps in this process, and I'll just share those with you right now. First off, we need to weed through all the information that's out there because there is a lot. So we're going to take some time to weed through information and the misinformation, okay? And I'm going to talk about why there's a lot of misinformation out there when it comes to nutrition, and what you can do about it. We'll also talk about like who are the people that you should be listening to when searching for nutrition advice and information, and who are the people that you should maybe move on. What are some of the red flags that say, I don't know if I should necessarily listen to what this person has to offer, because they're not an expert, they don't know what they're talking about, you know. Once you've been able to weed through all that information, our next step here is to establish a starting point for ourselves, because it's easier to start from some sort of foundation than build completely from scratch, right? When you're designing basically a diet for yourself. And so our starting point is going to be general government nutrition guidelines. We'll talk about Healthy People 2020. We'll talk about dietary guidelines for Americans. We'll talk about My Plate. We'll talk about some of the DRIs and what they mean. And those will serve as your foundation. Now, some people like to approach dietary guidelines as law and say, this is what you need to do, and this is exactly how you should do it. But the reality is that every single human being is different. And so again, our government nutrition guidelines are not the end all be all. Okay, we're going to use them as a foundation, and then we'll learn how to change different things so that they fit our own personal selves. Okay, so then once we have that foundation, step 3 is going to be to figure out what works for us individually. Again, every single person is different. So what can you do to figure out what nutritionally is going to work best for you? Finally, we'll introduce some practical application and how to put this all into practice. Now, again, originally when I designed this presentation, it was meant for college students. And so a lot of this will be how to eat healthy in the cafe, how to eat healthy on a low budget or no budget, right? When you're in college, sometimes you don't have any income. And so how can you put some of these things into practice in their situation? But I'll also do my best to tie in some information for adults, people who are working on their own, people who have a family, and what you can do there, okay? So there we go, 4 steps. Weed through the information, we'll establish a starting point, figure out what works for you, and then we'll put it all into practice. Step 1, weeding through the information. And to be completely honest, there's a lot of information out there, right? Seems like every new blog post has some healthy rule to follow or claims to have the answer to all of your problems, some new dietary hack, right? And in order to make good decisions for yourself, it's going to be really important to know how to weed through all that information and determine what's quality and what's not. This is a topic that I'm very interested in myself. So before we get too into things, I do want to share some personal history with you and why I personally love reading specifically about contradicting information. Okay. I've had an interest in nutrition for quite a long time, and it really developed because I saw it as a need in order to live a long, healthy life. At an early stage, I realized that my extended family isn't super healthy, right? When I was about probably 7th or 8th grade, started to realize this. My immediate family is in pretty good health. My extended family isn't necessarily, okay? I've got breast cancer that runs in the family, diabetes, obesity in general is very prominent. I've got some really great German genetics, right? If you're German, you know you're not blessed with what some people call skinny genes, okay? You're not naturally really thin, very big bone, lots of muscles, and you may realize that you put on weight pretty easily. I realized that at a young age. I couldn't just snack on whatever I wanted because I did gain weight pretty easily. And so if I was going to grow up with these same German genetics and this German blood in my body, I knew I would very easily be on the same path if I wasn't conscious about what I was putting into my body. And I actually have this vivid memory pretty early in high school, probably sophomore or junior year, because I was starting to think about what I wanted to do in college. And I consciously thought to myself, I probably shouldn't say this if my parents are listening, but I consciously thought to myself that it didn't matter how much debt I went into, how much money I spent on my education, didn't matter what career I ended in after I graduated from college, but for the next, say, 4 years or 6 years or however long I decided to go to school for, I was going to dedicate my life to learning how to be healthy. Otherwise, I wouldn't make it a priority. Okay, if I went to school for something other than exercise and health and nutrition, if I studied, say, like art or business, I just wouldn't make it a priority to learn how to be healthy on my own. And so I was like, I might as well just go to school for 4 years and learn everything I can to be healthy. And so that really is what drove my decision to attend school where I did and to study exercise science. Okay. And then I actually ended up getting my master's degree in exercise science as well. And now I'm back teaching at the same institution I attended. So it worked out for me. I spend a lot of time now teaching and educating young kids about diet and exercise and nutrition. But that really is what drove my decision to study what I did in school. And so, even though at that point I had decided that learning how to be healthy was essentially my life's purpose, that didn't stop the struggle that I went through for the coming years. That didn't stop me from gaining 15 pounds my freshman year of college. Okay, I went through that freshman 15, and I was an athlete too. I was burning mass amounts of calories every day and still found a way to gain a lot of weight. Went through a lot of stress, still didn't quite learn how to take care of myself. And I couldn't seem to develop a philosophy for myself or any good habits because it really seemed that no matter what I read or learned about nutrition, I would read or find something else that completely contradicted it. And so you may have found this. The more you read and the more you learn, the more confusing things become because you find one person that says one thing, one person that says the complete opposite. And it's like, what am I even supposed to believe? And this is really prevalent in the field of nutrition. And so after a few years of confusion, I finally learned to find a love and an interest for this conflict. And so I would eventually intentionally read about both sides of an issue, right? I remember specifically reading a lot about like gluten intolerance. That was huge a couple years back. So, some people would say, like, it doesn't matter if you have celiac disease or if you're intolerant. Nobody should eat wheat. Nobody should eat gluten. Then I would read other information that said, well, unless you have celiac disease, there's no reason to avoid wheat because there's lots of nutrients in those whole grains. And so while many people may only read one side of an issue, the side that they firmly believe, and stack up all this evidence to support it, I would intentionally seek out both sides of a conflicting issue to really try to decide what I thought was true. And so now, essentially, I'm here to break it down for you, simplify it, so you don't have so much crap to go through. And I'm not going to give you necessarily all of the answers to all these specific conflicting issues right away. But I'll give you some examples of common conflicts you've come across or that I have come across just to kind of get your wheels spinning. And then we'll talk about how to approach these issues so you can decide for yourself what may be best for you. So for example, I mentioned kind of the whole gluten controversy. Okay, I've read some articles that have led me to believe that carbohydrates and gluten are the cause of all of our problems and should be avoided entirely. Okay, I've also read information that's led me to believe that carbohydrates are essential to the diet and are really important for energy production, which they are, especially if you're an athlete. Okay, but again, read both sides of the issue. And to this day, carbohydrates are still very much demonized. Okay, I've heard and believed that saturated fat leads to no health problems. There's some researchers that say saturated fat causes no issues, but I've heard just as convincing research stating that saturated fat consumption is closely linked to cardiovascular disease. So again, it's like, what do you believe? I've heard and strongly believed myself that sugar should be avoided at all costs, and it can be highly addictive. And again, I've read equally convincing material stating that there's nothing inherently wrong with sugar, and only The only issue is the excess calories that come from that sugar consumption, and that's what causes problems, okay? So like you name the controversy, I've probably read and firmly believed both sides of that controversy at some time. Okay, and so from educating myself on both sides of a lot of this conflict, I've realized that the reality here is twofold. Okay, first of all, we need to understand that nutrition as a science, right? Because nutrition is a science, it's not very old. Okay, and so we just simply don't have all the answers. And that's okay, all right? If you think about other sciences like chemistry and physics, right? Chemistry has been studied for thousands of years. Ancient physics texts are thousands of years old. And so we have more answers, right? We have certain laws established, like gravity is a law that's been studied and researched for thousands of years, and we know it to be fact. But modern nutrition has only been studied for 50, maybe 60 years. Okay, and so we're not even close to finding any scientific law in any area of nutrition. Okay, so it's okay to come to that conclusion that we just don't have all the answers. But the second reality here is that unfortunately, most people aren't okay with not having answers. Many people will tend to cherry pick information that best fits their viewpoint, right? And they continually only read evidence that supports their view. And because people are so stubborn, they also tend to pass off that cherry picked information as law, which is why you'll have two really, really conflicting sides to any argument, really. And on top of that, the transmission of all information over the internet, right, especially nutrition information, is not necessarily reliable. And I like to think of this transmission of information as a big game of telephone, right? Have you ever played telephone as a kid and you stand in a long line and somebody at the end thinks of a phrase to say and they turn around and whisper to the next person what that phrase was. And by the time it gets through the entire chain, the last person doesn't hear anything that's similar to what the original statement was. Okay, and that's what happens as nutrition is passed down a chain throughout the internet. If you think of the original source of information as like a peer-reviewed study, okay, researchers will share this information. Some people will cite it in maybe their articles or their blogs, something a little bit more casual. And then somebody else will find it and they'll share it in their blog. And then somebody will find that information and they'll post it on Instagram. And then somebody will, and the chain just keeps going. And by the time it reaches you, it may not be anything close to the original information that was, founded in that original study. Okay, and so you have to be really skeptical of everything you read on the internet for that reason. And that truly is what ends up leading to a lot of the false information out there. Okay, so now I'm going to take a second and let you pause the video if you need to. If you've got some time to sit and write things down, take 2 minutes for yourself, shift your brain a little bit. And I want you to just think of every single piece of nutrition information or advice that you've ever heard. Anything that you've ever heard that you can think of, go ahead and just jot it down on a piece of paper or maybe just scroll through your brain. What are some pieces of nutrition information you've ever been told? You can go ahead and pause the video and do that now. Okay, so if you're back, I'm going to share with you now just some examples of when I did this activity, some of the things I personally thought of. Maybe you're on par with a lot of the things that I have heard, maybe not, maybe you've got something additional. But again, this is just general short statements of nutrition dietary advice. Some of my favorites here, like don't eat sugar. It's as addicting as cocaine. Or it's best to eat 6 small meals a day rather than 3 big meals. We all heard that. Or don't eat after 6 p.m. or you'll gain all that weight as fat. Saturated fat causes heart disease. Kale is the magic vegetable. Okay, eat lots of kale because that's going to be really good for you. Don't eat in the morning. Intermittent fasting has lots of health benefits is another one. Don't eat too much fruit because it's high in sugar. Eating organic is best. If you cut out carbs, you'll lose weight. Dairy causes cancer. Wheat, gluten are the culprits for the obesity epidemic. Too much protein is bad for your kidneys. Okay, go eat keto. Keto is the way to go. Everybody should be keto if you need to lose weight. Don't eat meat. Humans were meant to be vegan, right? Aspartame causes cancer. We've heard that before. Eating eggs can raise your cholesterol. That was popular back in the 80s. Count your calories, right? That's the best way to control your intake, is to count your calories. Doesn't matter what you eat as long as you exercise. Some people buy into that camp. Fat makes you fat. Or like a glass of red wine a day will lower your risk for heart disease. Okay, just a general list of pieces of nutrition information. I'm not going to go ahead and tell you like if any of those are necessarily right or wrong, but just to look at the big picture now. Look at some of the things that you have written down, compare them to what I have written down. Does anything contradict each other? Is there any conflicting information there? And if so, who's right? What are the answers? Can you not eat breakfast and only intermittently fast and eat 6 small meals a day? Does that work? Who's right? What are the answers? And the unfortunate answer here is that it depends. Okay, both sides of a conflicting issue can be passed off as fact from one person to the next, likely because somebody has been successful following advice from both sides of the issue. Okay, we've met people that have cut out carbohydrates completely and lost a lot of weight. Okay, and they say, this is the answer. This is how everybody should do it. Okay, we've met other people, specifically if you think about like vegetarians and vegans. Okay, vegetarians and vegans eat a primarily carbohydrate diet. Many people have gone vegan and lost a lot of weight and been completely healthy. And so who's right? Is it the person on the keto diet or the vegan diet? They've both been successful. Who is right? And so, they've both been successful. So, to some extent, they're both right. Okay, every human is different. And so, depending on your lifestyle and your morals and your likes and your dislikes, and simply how your body works and what it tolerates, your ideal style of eating may be very, very different from that of another person. And that doesn't mean that one of you is right and one of you is wrong. Okay, it means that you have found what works for you. Many different eating patterns work. It's all about finding something that makes you happy, that you enjoy doing, and finding something that's sustainable. Okay. If you do a ketogenic diet and you can continue to do that for the rest of your life, then good for you. If your blood markers are good, if your weight is in check, and you can continue to eat keto for the rest of your life, then you have found something that works for you. But there are other people that attempt keto and can't sustain it. Okay. It doesn't fit their lifestyle. They like to go hang out with their friends. They don't want to bring boxed lunches with them so they can eat because the food that's going to be at that party or whatever isn't going to be what they consume. Okay, that just doesn't fit everybody's lifestyle. Okay, so find something that you can continue to sustain for the rest of your life. Okay, so now what I'd like to do is switch gears a little bit. We're going to talk about where to get our nutrition advice from. As you're now researching and trying to figure out what does work for you, it's likely that you'll read a plethora of blog posts, internet articles, you'll seek the advice of other experts on the internet, you'll be on Instagram, you'll be on Pinterest. And so I'm going to share with you now what essentially what you need to look for from those people, what kind of advice you can expect to get from them, and then what are the red flags if you come across something, what indicates that you shouldn't necessarily take the advice of that individual. Okay, and we're talking specifically now looking for information on the internet. Ideally, the best way to look for information is to read peer-reviewed research, scholarly journals, scholarly articles, but that's not going to excite most of the people out there, right? Reading scientific literature isn't on the forefront of anybody's priority right now. So if you're not going to read scientific literature, here is what you can do and what you can look for from individuals that are trying to share information on the internet. Okay, and so I have two lists here, a list of 4 things to look for in, say, a quote expert, somebody you should take advice from, and 4 red flags or 4 things to maybe shy away from or keep an eye out for, as to somebody you necessarily shouldn't take advice from. All right, so here we go. True experts, people you want to take your advice from, have these things in common. First off, they have experience coaching other people. All right. True experts know that every single person is different and what works for them might not work for somebody else. Okay. From both their education and their experience, they have learned how to help clients of all kinds work towards their goals. Okay. They also likely have experience being healthy themselves. Maybe they've lost a lot of weight or just maintained a healthy lifestyle for a long period of time. So it's important for them to have experience not only helping themselves be healthy, but also coaching other people how to be healthy. Okay, we'll talk about a red flag coming up pretty soon. And that, just to give you a little preview, is going to be watch out for the people that only have experience with themselves or losing weight themselves, because that's not necessarily going to be applicable advice for you. Okay. Second thing here is that ideally look for somebody who has credentials, maybe a degree, maybe a certification, or preferably both. If somebody is really serious about what they do and the information that they're sharing, they should at the very least have some type of certification. The best certifications are those that are received by an accredited organization. But really, if somebody wants to have a good reputation, build good rapport with their clients, they're going to, at the very least, seek out some type of cert. Even better, you're going to be taking your advice from somebody who has gotten formal education on that topic. So PhDs, registered dietitians, medical doctors, okay? People that have experience very specifically studying nutrition. So look for their credentials. Now, I do want to point out this isn't the end all be all, because there are some people out there that don't have a degree or a certification, but they do have tons of experience coaching other people and helping other people be successful, and they know their stuff. Okay. There are also some people out there that have 1,000 letters after their name, but no great applicable knowledge. So I want to point out this isn't the end all be all. However, it is an important marker to look for. What are the credentials of the individual you're taking your advice from? Okay. Number 3 is that they cite their sources and they also know what good sources are. Okay. True experts know that they know what they know because they learned it from somewhere else. And when somebody is credible and they know their stuff, they want to tell you where they learned their information from. Okay. A true expert will never try to pass off any piece of information as their own. Okay. First off, they know that that's illegal. Okay. That's plagiarism. But they also very much want to share where they got their information from specific research articles, from a specific data. Okay. And so they also know that specifically the best sources are going to be those peer-reviewed studies and scholarly research. And so ideally that's what they're citing in their articles or in their videos. What you want to watch out for is people that cite their sources, but they're citing just random articles or blogs from the internet, like Coach John shared this information, and so I'm going to cite it in my article. But where did Coach John get his information from? And where was the beginning of that telephone? That's really what you need to look for. Remember that the fitness industry is really a big game of telephone. Okay, and coaches and influencers are the people who pass that message along. Research, again, is the beginning of that telephone, and experts know that to avoid this jumble mess of information at the end of the telephone line, they need to restate the original message and tell everyone where the original message came from. Okay. Good sources, again, are things like peer-reviewed research. So if you're reading a blog post that directly and unbiasedly cites clear, peer-reviewed research, you know it's going to be a pretty decent source. Um, Unfortunately, there are some sites out there that do cite peer-reviewed research, but still like to cherry pick the information or state kind of the side of their preferred bias. And so that's something you also need to watch out for. Okay. And then number 4, they continue to learn. Um, the more you learn, the less you know. I'm a firm believer in that statement. And this is really the frustrating yet beautiful part of continuing education. Okay, experts know that as they continue to grow, they'll discover 10 things that they still need to learn for the one thing that they just did learn. And then you just continue to chase that train of knowledge. Okay, but a true expert really never claims to know it all because they know that there's so much more they have to know that's out there. Watch out for the people that think that they know it all. Okay, so now moving on, what are some red flags? Be wary of experts, influencers, people that like to share information on the internet that do these things. Okay, first, watch out for those who take what I like to call, this is what worked for me, so you should try it approach. Okay, many people who claim to be experts have found success in something like weight loss especially. And they want to share everything that they've learned and done for themselves with the world. And that intention is great. It's wonderful and I love it. But this can be incredibly dangerous for those who read their information. Because following poor fitness and nutrition advice could potentially lead to things like injury or nutrient deficiency. Okay. And these experts are also opening that dangerous door to anybody who will listen to them. Okay. In addition, and this is just kind of a side issue with this point, but many influencers that are obsessed with weight loss or have lost a lot of weight on their own also display very serious signs of disordered eating or orthorexic behaviors. Okay. It's really easy actually to lose weight in very unhealthy ways. And I say this a lot. Weight loss is not synonymous with good health. And so be wary of people that only talk about their weight loss or have only been successful with weight loss on their own, because there's no way of knowing that that information is going to be applicable to you in your situation. Okay. Second, watch out for people that don't have a degree or a certification or just don't list their credentials. And this kind of coincides with that point we talked about earlier. If someone is serious about what they're doing and the information they're sharing, they will at the very least get a certification that shows that they've educated themselves in some way. If they have no education in that field, then they are again opening a really dangerous door. On top of this, depending on the state you live in, specifically when it comes to nutrition, not necessarily exercise, but when it comes to nutrition, there are very specific laws in place that say who can share dietary information and who can't. And if somebody doesn't know what these laws are, again, they're towing a really dangerous line. And if they accidentally cause injury to somebody, they can be legally responsible for those injuries. There's a lot of liability involved with that. So those are things to research as well if you're somebody who's interested in sharing nutrition information. The analogy I like to use to explain this is essentially like if you're going to hire a mechanic to fix your car being our bodies, if you're going to hire a coach or get information from somebody to help you fix your body, or to teach you how to fix your car so you never have to see a mechanic again, okay, teach you how to be healthy so you never have to see a nutrition coach again. At the very best, you'll hire somebody who went to trade school, has a certificate, and has years and years and years of experience. Okay. At the very least, you'll hire somebody who either has a certificate, a job at a garage, or experience fixing somebody else's car. Okay. What you're not going to do is walk down to your neighbor 2 doors down who just fixed their truck 3 days ago and ask them to fix your car because they don't have the qualified experience. Okay. you're not going to, it's not wise to go seek out advice from somebody who's only had experience losing weight themselves. Um, it's just not smart. You want to find somebody who is educated and experienced, okay? And then our third point here, and I touched on this earlier, but watch out for people who only talk about weight loss. Because again, weight loss is not synonymous with health. I've seen so many social media accounts, blogs, YouTube channels that are all about weight loss. And the majority of these accounts, in all honesty, are run by females who have experience with some significant amount of weight loss themselves. And again, the intention is there. The intention to share their success is great. But it also is very obvious that some of these women also struggle with some serious body image issues, distorted eating, borderline orthorexic behaviors. Okay. A true expert, even if their specialty is weight management, okay, a true expert shares information on how to improve your overall health, and knows that weight alone or that number on the scale gives very little insight into one's own health status. Okay, so watch out for people who only talk about weight loss. And then finally, my fourth point here is be skeptical of those who like to push supplements. Now, I have a very strong opinion on supplementation that we'll get into later. But if you're getting advice from somebody who is trying to sell you a product, okay, some sort of supplement typically, this is a really big red flag because a true expert knows that there may be certain supplements that work for certain people depending on their situation, but they also know that every person is different, right? And supplementation of any kind should be tailored to an individual's needs. Okay, a mass push to sell a supplement likely means that the individual will benefit monetarily in some way or another. Okay, they're trying to make a check for their family, which in and of itself isn't wrong, right? These people need to make money. However, the biggest issue here is when we're looking at like network marketing companies. Okay. And again, I have a strong opinion on network marketing companies in general that we won't get into today, but specifically those who work for companies like Beachbody or Isogenics or Advocare. First of all, to be a coach, quote unquote, within any one of these companies, there really are no guidelines to therefore call yourself a coach. But then you start marketing yourself as a coach and coaching other people. And these people really don't have the experience or the education or the training to carry that title. So you want to watch out for their information. Plus, they're trying to sell a supplement. And so some individuals, and I'm not saying everybody is like this, but there are some individuals out there, okay, who could care less about your health and well-being and just need to make money. And so they'll try to get you to buy these supplements or these products so that they can make their paycheck. So just some red flags to watch out for there. And again, I know people that work for network marketing companies. Many of them, their intentions are great and they're excellent, and they learn and educate themselves along the way. There are plenty of people who work for, say, Beachbody that are very knowledgeable. However, just be careful. Be careful when you're taking advice from somebody who's selling a product, because they may not always have your best intentions in mind. Okay.